Hi friends, welcome to the session. This session discusses some of the methods of teaching English like the grammar translation method, the direct method, the bilingual method, Dr. West's method and the audio-lingual method. In direct method, teaching is done entirely in the target language. In grammar translation method, grammar rules are to be memorized and a long list of vocabulary to be learnt by heart. Bilingual method recommends controlled and limited use of mother tongue in teaching second language. In audio-lingual method, new language is first heard and extensively drilled before being seen in its written form. The principles, methodology, merits and demerits of each method are dealt in detail. Method, according to W. F. Mackey 1950, determines what and how much is taught, selection, in what order in which it is taught, gradation, how the meaning and form are conveyed, presentation and what is done to make the use of language unconscious. Thus, we find that a method deals with form of things, that is selection, gradation and presentation. Edward Anthony 1963, with specific reference to language learning, describes a method as an overall plan for the orderly presentation of language material, no part of which contradicts and all of which is based on a selected approach. Some of the important methods of teaching English are the grammar translation method, the direct method, the bilingual method, Dr. West's method, the audio-lingual method. Let us discuss each method in detail. The grammar translation method. The grammar translation method, also known as the classical method, is the oldest method used to teach classical languages like Sanskrit, Greek, Latin, Persian, etc. It was known in United States of America as Prussian method as it had its origin in Germany, or more exactly Prussia. This was the brainchild of German scholars like John Scherenstecker, Karl Plotz, H. S. Ollendorff and John Medinger. This method, which originated around the year 1840, aimed to make language learning easier. Grammar translation method is a way of learning a language through the detailed study of its grammar. Grammar is taught prescriptively through the presentation and study of rules. The learner applies the rules of grammar in translating sentences and parts of texts from the mother tongue into the target language and vice versa. The meaning of English words, phrases and sentences is taught by means of word-by-word translation into mother tongue. Accuracy is given great importance. The learner is required to attain high standards in translation. Vocabulary is taught through bilingual word lists, reference to dictionaries and memorization of words and their meanings. The first language is maintained as the reference system in the acquisition of the second language. Stern 1983. The grammar translation method is based on the following principles. A second language can be easily learned through translation. Grammar is the soul of language. Teaching of a foreign language is easy, quick and economical as the structural pattern of two languages are compared. Learning proceeds from known to unknown. In a class based on grammar translation method, the learners read the passage and give translation of each sentence in mother tongue. The doubts of the learners are clarified through illustrations and by giving mother tongue equivalents and explanations. Comprehension questions are asked to make sure that the learners have understood what they have read. The grammar items are taught detectively and exercises are given. The merits. Some of the advantages of grammar translation method are saves time and effort as translation gives meaning more quickly than definition, demonstration, etc. A strong bond can be established between the phraseology of the target language and the vernacular. Correct knowledge of the grammar is insisted. Clear distinction between two languages is possible. Less teaching aids are required. Does not require lot of labor on the part of the teacher. Demerits of this method are: speaking skill is given less importance. Phonetic aspects like pronunciation, stress and intonation are not emphasized. Focus on written rather than oral language. While being translated, the cultural and traditional elements of language are likely to be lost. The unit of teaching is a word and not a complete sentence. The use of vernacular may become more dominant than the target language. Some usages and idioms may not have true translations. The method may be frustrating to students as they need to memorize words and rules. Lays emphasis on the rules of grammar, which is not very sound in teaching learning of a language. Communicative competency cannot be tested. Now, the direct method. The direct method came as a reaction against the translation method. The reformists believed that language cannot be taught naturally and directly without the intervention of the mother tongue. The chief advocates of this line were Pendergast and Sauer. This method was also known as psychological method, reform method, phoneme method, Berlitz method and anti-grammatical method. Later, it became popular as direct method. The direct method was popularized by Berlitz schools in Europe. It was introduced to India in the 20th century. According to Webster's New International Dictionary, direct method is a method of teaching foreign language, especially a modern language, through conversation, discussion and reading the language itself without the use of people's language, without translation and without the study of formal grammar. The words are first taught by pointing to the object or picture or by performing actions. Kirkman says, the foreign word or group of words should be associated with its meaning direct without the intervention of the native speech. The book Art of Teaching and Learning of Languages by Franco Goin, 1880, points out that a foreign language could be taught in a series of simple events. The teacher described each event in the foreign language and set reading and writing tasks on these lessons. The teacher used full sentences in the foreign language as input rather than words and phrases. No translation was used. In direct method, the language for everyday life rather than literary language was given importance. The emphasis was given to the development of oral communication skills. Grammar, if necessary, was taught inductively. Only the functional level grammar was given importance. The aim of the direct method was to get the learner to think in the target language. According to H. E. Palmer, 1925, English through action, the direct method is characterized by banishing translation in any form, including the use of the mother tongue and the bilingual dictionary in the classroom. Teaching grammar, if required, inductively. Oral teaching preceding any form of reading or writing. Systematic teaching of phonetics, replacing disconnected speech with connected text. Teaching meaning of words and phrases by means of objects or by natural contexts, and inculcating vocabulary and structure of language to a large extent by question and answers. Principles of direct method. The process of learning is essentially one of forming associations, speech with appropriate action, words with concepts and objects. There must be direct association between thoughts and words. The associations had to be direct, concrete and definite, and cross association which conflicted with each other had to be avoided. The foreign language is taught without using mother tongue. The pupil gets an exposure to objects through direct method. His senses of listening, seeing, smelling, feeling, etc. gets the first hand knowledge. The thought, concept, idea, word or object is fully grasped by his senses. The more the lesson in English is a lesson in English and not in the mother tongue, the faster will be the progress of the learner. Drill and practice develop confidence and skill of speaking in English. Repetition is essential if associations had to be formed and reinforced. The words, sentences and structures are revised again and again in direct method of teaching English. The teacher should begin with a limited number of items. Memory depends not only on repetitions, but attention and interest as well. So, if a learner is motivated and wants to learn a language, he or she will do it. Functional grammar in inductive form is taught. Formal teaching of grammar should be done only after learners have intuitively absorbed it from the text. There should be no memorization of word lists, verb declensions, etc. Grammar teaching should begin at the sentence level and not word level, as syntax is the most important part of grammar. Graded and selected words are provided for different stages. This method favors the presentation of limited vocabulary based on the needs and experience of the learner. Words are taught more suitably by their material association, suitable context, explanation and practice of drill in the oral class lessons. Unit of speech is a sentence and not a word. Emphasis is laid on speaking full sentence. The learner is introduced to various types of sentences. In direct method, chances for lots of oral work is provided for language learning. The auditory impressions and motor activities, that is listening and speaking, play a very important role in picking up the language skills. This is done by question and answers, dialogues, commands and execution and conversation. Oral work is very helpful for the development of correct pronunciation, stress and intonation and rhyme and rhythm in poetry lessons. In a class based on direct method, the learners are encouraged to seek direct comprehension by inferring meaning of unknown elements from the context while reading the passage. The teacher clarifies students' doubt by providing direct experiences associating the words and the objects. She resorts to miming, blackboard sketches or explanations in foreign language where the words could not be made clear by concrete representation. The learners listen to the target language as the teacher uses complete, meaningful sentences during simple discourses. The teacher asks the learners to answer to her questions in target language. The questions are distributed among the learners in the class or the class may answer in chorus. More exercises are given which consists of question and answer interchange in the class. The study of grammar is kept at a functional level, being confined to those areas which are continually being used in speech. The learners are motivated to draw their own structural generalizations from what they had been learning through inductive process. A small passage for dictation is also included at the end of the session. Merits of direct method. The following are the merits of this method. This method lays more emphasis on oral work, which ensures good pronunciation of the learners. For teaching the idioms of English, this method is more suitable. There is direct bond between thought and expression, so it helps the learner to have fluency in speech. It helps the students to have good command over the language. Psychologically, this method is very sound because the teacher proceeds from particular to general and from concrete to abstract. It makes the learning of English easy and pleasant. It helps the teacher and learner to cover up more content in less time. Demerits. There is need for really competent teachers for teaching English through this method. There is an overemphasis on oral work. Reading and writing process of the language get less attention. This method is not suitable for average and below average learners. This is an expensive method as the teacher has to use some aids for teaching. The bilingual method. A true bilingual is described as a person who can jump from one language to another and talk fluently about any situation in either the mother tongue or the target language with ease. The bilingual method was proposed by C.J. Dodson of Wales. Dodson recommended controlled and limited use of mother tongue in teaching the second language as he feared that the extensive use of direct method might make the vernacular disappear in several countries. This method makes use of the first language in learning the second language. The different aspects of direct method and grammar translation method were incorporated to evolve an effective second language teaching method. The aim of bilingual method is to help learner to speak fluently and accurately in the target language. Help the learner to write fluently and accurately in the target language. Prepare the learner in such a manner that she can achieve true bilingualism. The bilingual method is built around situations. The learning materials are quite small with lots of illustrations. The illustrations will aid the conceptualization process in learners. Fluency in language skills are achieved in each situation. The focus is in the early stages on oral or conversational proficiency. All language skills are considered equally important and no skill is postponed to the later time. Reading is to a large extent confined to deciphering the stimuli. Writing comes at a much later stage. The unit of teaching is a sentence. The steps of the methodology are as follows. Imitation of basic foreign language sentences. Basic situation. Interpretation of basic sentence in foreign language. Basic situation. This step comes after the learner has become fluent in pronouncing the basic sentences in foreign language. The teacher gives an oral mother tongue stimulus for evoking the foreign language response of the learner. Substitution and extension of foreign language sentences. Extended situation. The learner is able to speak independently about limited situation without an oral or printed stimulus. Independent speaking of sentences. Basic and extended situation. Learner begins to speak related sentences without a spoken stimulus either in the mother tongue or foreign language. Reverse interpretation. Optional. Basic and extended situation. Here the teacher gives a foreign language stimulus and the learner responds in mother tongue. Interpretation of questions if not undertaken in step 1 and or 3. This is basically the question answer stage and learners are taught question forms separately so that the question patterns are consolidated before they respond to questions in foreign language. Foreign language question and answers, basic and extended situations. normal foreign language conversation, basic, extended and original situation. This is the final step where the learners converse independently in the foreign language. Dodson admits that activities have been taken from many methods, but that these have been systematized into new synthesis. Merits of bilingual method are: judicious use of mother tongue by the teacher does not spoil the environment of teaching second language. It helps in giving proper training for different skills, that is listening, speaking, reading and writing. Pattern practice given to the learners is essential in acquiring the skill. The use of the mother tongue saves a lot of time. Meanings and concepts conveyed with the aid of mother tongue are better understood by the learner. This method does not need special facilities or equipment. It can be successfully used anywhere and everywhere. It fully makes use of the language habits already acquired by the learners while learning their mother tongue. Demerits: the use of mother tongue while teaching the second language will spoil the continuity of the class. A teacher who is not fluent in both languages cannot handle the class successfully. In cases where the linguistic features of the two languages are entirely different, this method will create confusion in the students. Dr. West's method. Dr. West's method lays more emphasis on reading. It was developed entirely for pragmatic reasons. According to Dr. Michael P. West, who formulated this method, a bilingual child does not need much to speak in the second language. He only requires reading ability. He prepared graded readers and rapid readers for children with the objective of developing reading, preferably silent reading, with enough scope for repetition and reinforcement of words. When the child picks up fluent reading and enjoys reading before paying attention to speech, he would have a sense of language. This would make the child's progress faster and easier. Merits of Dr. West's method. Reading ability can be enhanced even without the help of a teacher. Gives reading skill a very important place, especially silent reading. Graded reading material is provided to the child in Dr. West's method. It is better to leave the child under the care of good readers than with bad English. Thinking process will become rapid. Without emphasizing phonetics, words are taught by constant repetition. Demerits: speech comes before reading as a rule. Speaking and reading cannot be separated very easily. It is violated in this method. Neglects oral skill and writing skill. Pronunciation cannot be corrected in reading. Speech, listening, reading all have to go side by side, not reading alone. The audio-Lingual method. The audio-Lingual method was developed mainly in America in 60s and 70s during the Second World War. The term audio-lingualism was coined by Nelson Brooks in 1964, highlighting the basic belief of structuralism that speech is primary. Its focus was on the learner's ability to gain the communicative skills required in every discourse, particularly the skills of listening and speaking in the target language. The behaviorist theory of learning was adopted as it was assumed that one learned language through a series of stimulus-response chains. The method focused on syntactic progression. This method tried to demonstrate the fact that a language teaching method can be based on the rigorous scientific disciplines like linguistics and psychology. William Moulton of Princeton University enumerated 5 slogans which formed the basis of the audio-lingual method. Language is speech and not writing. A language is a set of habits. Teach the language, not about the language. A language is what native speakers say, not someone thinks they ought to say. Languages are different. These slogans are influenced by behaviorist psychology and structural linguists. The assumptions of the audio-lingual method as stated by Stern 1983 are: foreign language learning is basically a mechanical process of habit formation. Language skills are learned most effectively if items of the foreign language are presented in the spoken form before the written form. Analogy provides a better foundation for foreign language learning than analysis. The meaning which the words of a language have for a native speaker can be learned only if the matrix of allusions to the culture of the people who speaks the language. Main features of audio-lingual method are: the audio-lingual method treated each language skill separately. The method focused primarily on the skills of listening and speaking, but skills of writing and reading were not neglected. Dialogues were the main features of audio-lingual syllabus, which provided learners opportunity to practice, mimic and memorize bits of language. Pattern practice drills were an important technique for language teaching and learning. The language laboratory was introduced and gave learners opportunity to mimic, a model and memorize language patterns. In audio-lingual method, the skills were taught in the following order as listening, speaking, reading and writing. Language was introduced through dialogues which contained common structures and vocabulary used in everyday communication. The learners listened to the dialogues from the teacher or a tape to master all the features of the spoken target language. They repeat the dialogue and memorize it. The native speaker-like pronunciation was important in presenting the model. The learners adapt the dialogues to suit their context and role play it. Phrases and sentences of a dialogue were learned through repetition, first by the whole class, then smaller groups and finally individual learners. Some generalizations, not rules, were given to advanced learners about the structures they had practiced. Reading and writing were introduced in the next stage. All reading material was introduced orally first. Writing in the early stages was confined to the transcriptions of the structures and dialogues learned earlier. Once the learner has mastered the basic structures, he was asked to write reports or composition based on the oral lessons. Graded passages from literary texts were introduced at an advanced stage. Merits. It was the first language teaching method based on linguistic and psychological theories. For the first time, language learning was made accessible to a large group of learners. Techniques for intensive practice without translation were introduced. Demerits. The method developed language-like behavior in the learner rather than competence. The focus was on external manifestation rather than internal processes. The method assumed a one-to-one relationship between form and meaning, whereas in reality this was not true. Methods are meant for us and not us for the methods. The methods are to serve us in our teaching process and hence our servants and not our master. Every method has its merits and demerits. A best teacher adopts eclectic and pragmatic approach in her teaching. Let me conclude by quoting the famous Swiss psychologist and psychiatrist Carl Gustav Jung. One looks back with appreciation to a brilliant teacher, but with gratitude to those who touched their human feelings. The curriculum is so much necessary raw material, but warmth is the vital element for a growing plant and for the soul of a child. Before we attend the next session, try to answer the given questions. Direct method ensures fluency. Grammar translation method measures accuracy, but bilingual method assures both. Discuss. Is there any foolproof method of teaching English to Indian students? Give your comments on having an eclectic and pragmatic approach to the teaching of English in India. Hope the session benefited you. See you next time. Bye.